Hey, what's up guys, it's James Diamond here and welcome back to the next episode of my Uplifting Trance series here on Sonic Academy. In the last episode we were looking at beginning to start on our melodic elements, looking at a nice kind of pluck for the intro, and in this episode we're going to be going further and looking at a kind of intro lead made out of super saws to go on top, that kind of nice trancey type sound. So what's different to the last project video and last episode is that I've just gone ahead and added in the kind of chord progression using the mid bass and the sub bass. So I've also just added some extra kind of changes to the pluck, which have got the chord progression in. This was our standard kind of intro pluck, and I've just added an extra couple of notes up the top and then changed the bottom notes to fit the chord progression also. We're starting in the key of E minor and then we're dropping down to the key of C major. So it's quite a nice interesting technique that I like to do, where you can start a key in a minor track and then we're dropping down by 4 semitones. So we're starting in E, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, and we know that C will be now the relative major of E minor, meaning we can start in a minor key and then we can drop down to a major key for our melody section. So I'll just play you what I've done. Very simple, like I say, just changing up the kind of chord progression or adding in the chord progression. I'll play that for you now so you can hear what it sounds like, and then we'll get into making the intro kind of lead. It's a very nice chord progression there, nothing too special, but works really well with the kind of pluck. So you can almost start to get a hear of how the track's going to pan out. Like I was saying, it's kind of along those kind of classic sort of lines. So we're going to add a nice kind of classic sort of melody for the intro. So even though we've got our plucks, we want to add this kind of super saw on top. And I've gone ahead, just for the sake of time, and inputted the intro melody. So you can see it there. You can take the MIDI from the project or from the kind of download files from Sonic Academy, and then you can insert that into your own project. One thing to note is what I've kind of realized, and what I like to do with these kind of intro melodies, or at least these kind of classic sounding melodies, is a couple of very short notes at the bottom and then slightly longer ones at the top, kind of create that nice staccato kind of sound, rather than it being an ARP, which might have, say, an extra note in the middle here. We've kind of kept it as just as 2 notes, so it's not doing an ARP, it's just kind of doing the bottom note, which is the main chord, the main key, and then the top note is doing the actual kind of melodic part. So I've got our 2 leads set up here, and let's just first have a listen to see how this intro melody is going to sound. So pretty nice. I'm really liking that kind of melody. I'm really liking the sound. A very nice kind of trancey type sound for the intro. So I've got 2 of them set up, and these are the kind of patches that I've sourced and made. So let's just go ahead and start to process them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is obviously add our EQ. And these leads have got quite a bit of low end. I like to kind of process the EQ first when the cutoff on the filter is down, and then I like to open them up to add on the kind of extra delays and reverbs and things like that. But in terms of EQ, I want to hear how it sounds like when the cutoffs are down, as that's quite important as well. And then I'll flick between the 2 to make sure that they are sounding great. So let's add on some low end. And some very simple EQ there. As always, really, I never really kind of EQ too much on the individual channels themselves. We kind of leave that to the actual bus. And of course, like I've been kind of trying to drill into you over the course of this course, is that you don't need too much EQ. Realistically, you know, doing too much kind of EQ really destroys your sound, and hopefully kind of you can start to understand that it's little bits of EQ over a long period of time, rather than doing crazy boosts and chops in your actual kind of channels themselves. So let's just actually just completely take this EQ and bring it over to the second one. Again, very standard, not much to it at all. And let's just listen to see how they sound with the filters completely open. I think that's sounding pretty nice at the moment. We'll leave the kind of the volumes as equal at the moment, and then we might come back to see how they sound with different volumes once we get them into the mix. So first of all, we're going to go onto our bus. So I've linked these up to the kind of intro saw bus. As usual, we're just linking them using the small kind of delinking from the master, and then linking them up to the bus to create the bus. Very simple indeed. And the first thing we're going to add is, of course, the Mag EQ4. And now, much the same as what we've been doing on a lot of the other sounds, this is my other kind of little secret technique to make things sound nice and clean, is to use the airband. So obviously you can start to see that this plugin is really, really great for my kind of style and making things sounding as clean as possible. And we're just going to go and add some of the airband to really increase that nice top end. And straight away you can start to hear that it's got a really nice kind of top end to it. Excuse me, I had the 2.5 gigahertz band pushed up there just by one, and we are actually going to do that as well. We're going to push up the 2.5 to plus 0.5, and then let's push up the 650 hertz to 0.5 as well. And that really helps to just kind of clean up the sound. Next up, let's add some of our delay. And let's pull the pan to the left, offset to the right, pretty much as standard. I don't want to do too much delay on this sound. It needs to sound like it's kind of bouncing around, but I like to try and keep these leads as clean as possible so that they really kind of shine through the mix. This is starting to get to the point in the track where we've already got quite a thick foundation for the track. Any more kind of extra sounds that we put on, we really need to be careful with the way that we EQ and adds reverbs and delays and make them very subtle, because otherwise it's going to get very, very full very, very quickly. And that's when your track starts to sound very busy and nothing will be defined. Everything's fighting against each other in the mix. So let's just listen to see how this delay sounds at the moment. I'm going to pull the volume down by quite a bit. As like I said, I just want a little bit of delay. And in fact, let's just pull down the filters to about a quarter so we can really hear that delay a little bit more. So that sounded quite nice. Maybe let's take the time signature down, the time sync down to 2. Yeah, I think the time synced at 2 worked a lot better. Number 3, it was kind of almost doubling up on itself. It wasn't really kind of filling the gaps in the melody, in the top notes. It was kind of almost continuously playing at the same time as the top notes of the melody were playing. So that sounded quite nice. Let's leave that as that for the time being. Let's move these over, and then let's go ahead and add some reverb. Art Acoustics, once again, as I absolutely love this reverb unit. It's got a very kind of spacey sort of effect for it, and I find it great for using on my leads and these kind of super saw type sounds. So first of all, let's bring up on the low cut, as we really don't want any of that low end in there, as it's going to kind of muddy up the mix. We just really want to kind of hear the mids to highs of the reverb. Let's turn the dry level all the way up to around 0, and let's just pull back down on the wet slightly. And I don't want to have too much reverb on this. Again, this is, like I was saying, I want to keep it quite short. I don't want to kind of overwhelm and oversaturate the sound, otherwise it's not going to kind of come through in the mix very well. So let's just have a listen to see how that sounds. Sounding quite nice. Maybe I'll just pull back on the wet just a little bit. Okay, now let's just maybe have a look at getting the sounds in the volumes right, as they're a bit overpowering maybe. So I'm going to have my filters all the way up, and I'm going to start with Intro Saw 1, and then I'll start bringing up the volume of Intro Saw 2 and merge them in. Really liking the sound of these two leads. The first one is kind of a bit more snappy, and the second one's a bit more kind of open and atmospheric. So let's add on some sidechain, and then let's put it into the mix to see how that sounds. So as usual, we're just going to hit our sidechain preset. Let's close this all up, and we've got them into the mix here. I'm going to play the mix, but I'm going to have the volume all the way down on the saw bus. And let's maybe just mute the pluck for the time being, and I'll start to bring up the volume on the saw bus so we can kind of get the volume at the right place. So that's pretty much there. I think what I'm going to do is bring down on some of the sidechain, as that was a bit too much. Sounding a bit better there. Let's just go onto our span just to make sure that it's sitting nicely in between our low and our highs. So that's starting to sound a bit more like it. Just like I said, brought down on the mix amount on the LFO tool and the sidechain, just to make it so it's not as bouncy as it was before. So the last thing we're going to do is add on some compression, much the same way as what we did with the pluck. On the pluck bus, we added the compression after the sidechain, just to kind of reduce the amount of kind of bouncing up and down with the sidechain, and also it's a good way to kind of just pull all of your sounds together. So any kind of extra peaks of the reverb and the delay and the actual sound itself, we're just going to kind of pull all those together and make it a little bit more kind of smooth across the board. So I'm going to do a pretty short release, as I want the kind of compressor to bounce up and down. And then I'm going to do a reasonably fast attack. I don't want to make it as snappy. I don't want to kind of make it snappy like I would do on a kick drum. I just want to make it a very kind of smooth sort of compression. And we're going to leave the ratio at 2:1, as we just want it quite smooth as well. So I'm going to start bringing back on the threshold, and I'll pull up on the makeup game and try and get it kind of evened out within the mix. Yeah, that really kind of helps smooth it out. I just play it in solo mode so you can hear exactly what I was doing there. So exactly the same as the pluck. We're just kind of reducing it by a couple of dB on the top volume parts to help the lower volume parts kind of breathe through a little bit more, and that just kind of again helps the sound sound a bit tighter and a bit more together. So I'll just flick the sidechain on and off again in solo mode so you can hear what's going on there. So we can really start to hear that it's helping the sound really kind of pull itself together, and it's almost merging all of these delays and the reverb and the sidechain, pulling it all together to become one nice sound. Now we just go back to the Voxengo Span here, and we can notice, I'll just put it on mute, we can notice that there's actually quite a lot of high end going on here. So let's just have a look at that and how we can sort it out. It sounds a bit kind of fizzly on the top end. Of course, we've added the airband with the Mag EQ, so it is going to make it kind of fizzle at the top. Maybe it's just a little bit too much. So we can see that's coming from Intro Saw 1, and let's just go into the actual synth itself, and we've got our noise waveform here, so maybe if you just bring that down just a tad in volume. Making it a little less fizzly, and let's go on to our bus, and let's just add on another EQ, and let's just take some of that super high end away. So as you can see on the Voxengo Span there, it was becoming a little bit more kind of straight. It wasn't kind of peaking up too much in the high end. Didn't really make too much of a difference in terms of audible wise, but when we put it back into the mix, it's just going to help the high end of the percussion breathe for a little bit more. So I'm starting to like how that's sounding and sitting in the mix. We may have to come back to it later on in the project when we start structuring things out and doing all the final kind of fine tuning, but this is pretty much the way that I would set up doing my kind of intro lead bus. Using the Mag EQ just to add some nice kind of shine to the top end, and some minimal delay and reverb just to kind of give the atmosphere type sound. A little bit of sidechain to create the kind of pump, and then we're using the Vertigo VSC2 compressor afterwards, just to kind of bring all of the sounds together to really give that nice kind of standard smooth sound across the board. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.